The dessert arrived at exactly 7:30 p.m. Chocolate mousse with raspberry coulis, served in crystal bowls that caught the candlelight like little prisons of sweetness. 23 people crowded around the dining table in my son's Cleveland home, singing happy birthday with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far our stories are going. I was 75 years old, and this was supposed to be a celebration. I excused myself to use the bathroom. My knees ached from sitting too long, and the noise was making my head pound. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed the bathroom door slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see Vanessa standing at the marble countertop. My daughter-in-law didn't see me. She was focused on something in her hands, a small white pill between her fingers. She crushed it against the counter with the back of a spoon, grinding it into fine powder. Then she walked back toward the dining room, carrying my dessert bowl. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I watched as Vanessa returned to the table, set the bowl at my place, and smoothed her blonde hair with one practiced motion. She smiled at Thomas, my son, and touched his shoulder with what looked like affection. I stood there for 30 seconds, maybe 40, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. Then I walked back to the bathroom, closed the door, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked older than it had that morning. The lines around my mouth seemed deeper, carved by years of biting back words I should have said. When I returned to the table, everyone was waiting. Vanessa's brother was telling a story about his real estate business. Thomas was checking his phone. Nobody noticed me slip back into my seat. "There you are, Mom," Thomas said without looking up. "We were about to start without you." I looked at my dessert. The chocolate mousse sat there, innocent and deadly, with a faint ring of white powder barely visible on the rim. I looked at Vanessa. She was watching me with eyes that reminded me of a cat studying a mouse. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. "Thomas, would you mind switching bowls with me? Mine looks a little small." He glanced up, confused. "They're all the same size, Mom. Please." I met his eyes. "Indulge your old mother on her birthday." He shrugged and pushed his bowl toward me, taking mine without another thought. Vanessa's face went rigid for exactly 2 seconds before she recovered her smile. "That's sweet," she said. "You always did spoil him." I had sold my engagement ring to pay for Thomas's medical school tuition. 28 years ago, I'd stood in a pawn shop on Euclid Avenue with that ring in my hand. The diamond was small, just half a carat, but it had been my mother's. The pawnbroker offered me $2,400. I needed $2,800 for the first semester payment. I asked if he'd reconsider. He told me rings like mine were common. That sentiment didn't add value. I sold my mother's pearl necklace the next week for $400. Thomas ate his dessert in 4 quick spoonfuls, the way he'd eaten everything since he was a boy, always in a hurry, always on to the next thing. He scraped the bowl clean and set down his spoon with a satisfied sound. "Delicious," he said to Vanessa. "You outdid yourself with this dinner." She hadn't cooked any of it. The catering company had delivered everything at 5 p.m. I had watched them unload the van. I ate my mousse slowly. It tasted like chocolate and fear. Around me, the conversation continued. Vanessa's mother talked about her cruise to Alaska. Thomas's colleague discussed a surgery he'd performed. I nodded and smiled and watched the clock on the wall tick forward. 7:45 p.m. Thomas asked for coffee. 7:52 p.m. He loosened his tie. 8:03 p.m. He excused himself, saying he felt warm. 8:15 p.m. Vanessa's brother was mid-sentence when Thomas walked back into the dining room. His face had gone gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "I don't feel well," he said. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. "Thomas, what's wrong?" "Dizzy." He grabbed the edge of the table. Can't breathe right." I watched my daughter-in-law's face cycle through emotions in rapid succession. Shock, fear, confusion, and then something that looked almost like calculation. "Someone call 911, she shouted, but she was looking at me when she said it. Looking at me like she couldn't understand why I was still sitting there, untouched, while her plan was collapsing in front of 23 witnesses. Thomas collapsed before the ambulance arrived. He went down like a building being demolished. All at once. His 220 pounds hitting the hardwood floor with a sound I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Vanessa dropped to her knees beside him. She was crying, screaming his name. telling him to stay with her. Her performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen her crush that pill, I would have believed every tear. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. They loaded Thomas onto a stretcher while Vanessa held his hand. She rode with him in the ambulance, still crying, still playing the devastated wife. I rode to the hospital with Thomas's colleague, a cardiologist named Dr. Peterson, who kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror like he wanted to ask a question but couldn't find the words. In the emergency room waiting area, Vanessa sat with her mother and brother. They formed a tight circle, whispering urgently. I sat alone on a plastic chair near the vending machines watching them. Thomas's brother Philip arrived at 9:30 p.m. He walked past me without acknowledgement and went straight to Vanessa. I watched him put his hand on her shoulder. I watched them lean close together, speaking in voices too low to hear. A nurse came out at 10:15 p.m. Mrs. Beaumont? Vanessa jumped up. Yes, I'm his wife. Your husband is stable. We're running tests. The doctor will be out to speak with you shortly. After the nurse left, Philip turned to look at me for the first time since arriving. His expression was cold. You gave him that dessert, he said. It wasn't a question. I felt every eye in the waiting room turn toward me. I switched bowls with him, I said quietly. He ate mine. Why would you do that? Vanessa's voice was sharp, accusatory. What was in it? The question hung in the air like poison gas. I could tell the truth right now, in front of all these people. I could explain what I had seen, but I had no proof, no witnesses, just the word of an old woman against a beloved daughter-in-law. Nothing, I said. It was just mousse. But even as I said it, I saw the seed of doubt being planted in the eyes of everyone watching. The old woman who gave her son contaminated dessert. The confused elderly mother who couldn't be trusted. Vanessa pulled out her phone and started typing. Within minutes, family members began receiving text messages. I could see it happening in real time as people checked their phones and looked at me with new suspicion. At 11:47 p.m., a doctor emerged. He spoke only to Vanessa, his voice low and urgent. I caught fragments. Sedative in his system. Testing for specific compounds. Lucky he got here when he did. Vanessa turned to look at me. Her face was a mask of grief and fury. She did this, she said, pointing at me. She tried to poison my husband. They wouldn't let me see him. I sat in the emergency room waiting area for 3 hours before a nurse finally emerged with an update. Thomas was stable, they said. Conscious. The tests were still running. Only immediate family could visit. I'm his mother, I said. The nurse glanced at her clipboard, then at Vanessa, who stood flanked by Philip and her brother. Mrs. Beaumont has requested that only she be allowed in the room at this time. Vanessa's face was a perfect mask of wifely concern. He's very confused right now. The doctors said he shouldn't be agitated. And after what happened with the dessert, she left the sentence hanging there like a noose. I drove home at 1:30 a.m. My house felt different when I walked in. Smaller somehow. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table until dawn, replaying the night over and over. The crushed pill. The switched bowls. Thomas collapsing. Vanessa's accusation hanging in the air like smoke. At 6:47 a.m., my phone rang. Thomas's colleague, Dr. Peterson. Mrs. Beaumont, I thought you should know. They found a sedative in Thomas's bloodstream. A strong one. Temazepam, 30 milligrams. That's enough to cause significant respiratory depression in someone his size. My hand tightened on the phone. What does that mean? It means someone gave your son a very dangerous dose of medication. His voice dropped lower. Vanessa is telling the hospital staff that you have a history of confusion, that you've been mixing up medications. She showed them a document this morning. What kind of document? A power of attorney, dated 6 weeks ago. It gives her medical decision-making authority over you in case of incapacity. I set the phone down carefully on the table. My hands had started shaking again. A power of attorney I had never signed. 6 weeks ago, I had been in Toledo visiting my sister. I had medical records, receipts, photographs, proving I wasn't even in Cleveland when that document was supposedly signed. But who would believe an old woman accused of poisoning her own son? I called my doctor's office when they opened at 8 a.m. The receptionist put me through immediately when I explained why I was calling. Mrs. Beaumont, Dr. Foster said. He had been my physician for 23 years. I heard about Thomas. I'm so sorry. How are you holding up? Someone forged a power of attorney in my name. And they're telling people I'm confused, that I mix up medications. I took a breath. Alan, have you ever prescribed temazepam for me? Silence. Then, no, never. You've always been adamant about avoiding sedatives because of your mother's issues with them. Could you check your records? See if anyone has requested prescriptions in my name? More silence, the sound of typing. Then Dr. Foster's voice came back, tight with anger. Evelyn, I'm looking at 3 prescription requests that came through our online portal over the past 2 months, all in your name. Temazepam, 30 milligrams. I didn't authorize any of them because they weren't consistent with your medication history, but someone else might have filled them anyway. I'm pulling up the pharmacy records now. More typing. Cleveland Heights Pharmacy filled 1 prescription 5 weeks ago. It says I authorized it, but Evelyn, I never saw this request. Someone bypassed our normal authorization system. I closed my eyes. Who picked up the prescription? The record says you did, but there's no signature verification because it was picked up at the drive-through window. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Facts I could prove. Facts I could demonstrate. Facts that might save me from whatever trap was closing around me. At 10:15 a.m., my doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood on my porch. The older one, a woman with gray hair pulled back tight, showed me her badge. Mrs. Evelyn Beaumont? I'm Detective Morris. This is Officer Santos. We need to ask you some questions about the incident last night. I let them in. Made coffee. Answered every question with the truth, knowing how insane it all sounded. Yes, I switched dessert bowls with my son. No, I don't know what was in the medication. Yes, I saw my daughter-in-law crush something over the dessert. No, I don't have proof. Mrs. Beaumont, Detective Morris said gently, your daughter-in-law filed a report this morning. She says you've been showing signs of dementia, forgetting conversations, repeating yourself, getting confused about dates and times. That's not true. She has documentation, letters from your doctor expressing concern about your cognitive decline. My doctor never wrote any such letters. Officer Santos shifted in his seat. She also provided a list of incidents over the past 6 months where family members had to intervene because of dangerous behavior. Leaving the stove on, getting lost, driving to familiar places, accusing neighbors of theft. None of it was true, not a single word, but I could see how it looked. The confused old woman who didn't realize she was slipping, the concerned family trying to protect her from herself. Where were you on September 18th? Detective Morris asked. I'd need to check my calendar. She slid a paper across my table. This is a medical incident report from Cleveland General. It says you were brought in by your son after taking double your blood pressure medication by accident. I stared at the report. My name, my birth date, my address, a doctor's signature I didn't recognize. I was never at Cleveland General on September 18th. I was in Toledo visiting my sister Nancy. I have photos, receipts from restaurants, a speeding ticket I got on Route 90. For the first time, Detective Morris's expression shifted slightly. You have proof you were in Toledo that day? I can get it. I can prove I wasn't here for any of this. After the police left, I called Nancy. My hands were steadier now. Anger was replacing fear, and anger was useful. Anger could be shaped into action. Nancy, I need you to send me everything from my visit in September. Every photo, every receipt, every piece of evidence that I was with you. What's going on, Evie? I told her. All of it. The birthday party, the crushed pill, Thomas in the hospital, Vanessa's accusations, the forged documents, the medical reports about incidents that never happened. Nancy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Philip was here last month. What? Thomas's brother. He came to my house looking for you. Said he needed to talk about some family business. When I told him you'd gone home already, he seemed annoyed. He asked a lot of questions about your visit, whether you'd seemed confused or forgetful. The room felt suddenly colder. What did you tell him? I told him you were sharp as ever. That you remembered every detail of stories from 50 years ago. That you helped me organize my entire filing system. Nancy's voice hardened. Evie, I think he was trying to gather ammunition against you. At 2 p.m., I received an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Jennings & Associates, attorneys at law. The subject line read, Urgent matter regarding your welfare. The email was polite, professional, terrifying. It informed me that family members had expressed concern about my ability to live independently. That a guardianship hearing had been scheduled for the following Tuesday. That it was in my best interest to retain legal counsel immediately. Guardianship. The word felt like a trap closing around me. If they succeeded, Vanessa and Philip would control my life, my home, my money, every decision about my medical care, and I would have no way to prove what I had seen in that bathroom. I looked at the sender's name again, Jennings & Associates. Then I Googled the firm. The website was professional, sleek. They specialized in elder law, estate planning, guardianship proceedings. One of the partners was named Elizabeth Jennings. Her photo showed a woman in her 40s with blonde hair and an expensive suit. I clicked on her bio. Graduated from Case Western Law School in 2008, member of the Ohio State Bar Association, previously worked at Morrison & Hale. My breath caught. Morrison & Hale. That was Philip's firm. Thomas's brother was an attorney at Morrison & Hale. He had referred Vanessa to his former colleague. They had been planning this for weeks, maybe months, building a case against me, creating a paper trail of mental decline, forging documents, manufacturing incidents. The guardianship hearing wasn't just about control, it was about silence. If they succeeded, no one would believe anything I said about that night. I would be the confused old woman who imagined things, who made wild accusations against her loving family. And Vanessa would be free to try again, this time with no witnesses. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas's phone, but I knew it wasn't from him. Mother Evelyn, Thomas is asking for you. Please come to the hospital at 4 p.m., room 387. Come alone. We need to discuss your care going forward. I read the message 3 times. The words were wrong. Thomas had never called me Mother Evelyn in his life. It was always Mom or Ma. This was a trap. They wanted me at the hospital, in a controlled environment, where Vanessa could present her forged documents and concerned family narrative to doctors and social workers, where I would be the unreasonable old woman refusing to accept help. But I also needed to see my son. Needed to look him in the eye and find out if he believed what his wife was telling him, if he remembered anything about last night, if there was any part of him that still trusted his own mother. I arrived at Cleveland General at 3:47 p.m., 13 minutes early. Room 387 was on the 3rd floor in the cardiac care unit. The nurse at the desk nodded when I gave Thomas's name. Are you family? I'm his mother. She checked her computer. Mrs. Vanessa Beaumont left instructions that only she and Mr. Philip Beaumont are approved visitors. When did she leave those instructions? This morning at 7 a.m., before Thomas was fully conscious, before he could speak for himself. I stood at that nurse's station for a long moment, weighing my options. I could make a scene, demand to see my son, risk giving them exactly the ammunition they wanted, or I could leave, accept defeat, walk away from my only child while his wife poisoned him against me. Then I saw Dr. Foster stepping out of the elevator. He saw me at the same moment. His expression shifted from surprise to understanding in seconds. He walked toward me, his white coat flaring behind him, and said in a voice loud enough for the nurse to hear, Mrs. Beaumont, I'm glad you're here. I need to discuss some critical inconsistencies in your son's medical records. The nurse looked uncertain. Dr. Foster pulled out his hospital credentials. I'm consulting on this case. Mrs. Beaumont needs to be present for this conversation. Page Dr. Morrison and Mrs. Vanessa Beaumont immediately. Conference room 3, 5 minutes. He took my elbow and guided me down the hall before anyone could object. In the conference room, Dr. Foster closed the door. Evelyn, I found something. The prescription for temazepam that was filled in your name? The digital signature was forged. I can prove it. The timestamp doesn't match my clinic schedule, and the prescribing physician ID number is off by 1 digit. Someone made a mistake when they faked it. My heart was pounding. Does that mean? It means whoever tried to frame you isn't as clever as they think they are. And I'm going to make sure everyone in this hospital knows it. The door opened. Vanessa walked in, followed by Philip. Both of them stopped when they saw Dr. Foster. What is she doing here? Vanessa demanded. I specifically said, Mrs. Beaumont has every right to be here, Dr. Foster said coldly, especially given the fraudulent medical documents circulating in her name. Philip's expression went very still. I'm not sure what you're implying, Doctor. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Someone forged my signature on prescription authorization forms. Someone created false medical incident reports. And someone filed those reports with this hospital to support a guardianship action against Mrs. Evelyn Beaumont. Vanessa's face had gone white. That's absurd. We're trying to protect her. From what? I asked quietly. From the truth about what you did to my son? The silence in that conference room was absolute. Then Vanessa turned to Philip and said, Get the documents. Now. They wouldn't let me see him. I sat in the emergency room waiting area for 3 hours before a nurse finally emerged with an update. Thomas was stable, they said, conscious. The tests were still running. Only immediate family could visit. I'm his mother, I said. The nurse glanced at her clipboard, then at Vanessa, who stood flanked by Philip and her brother. Mrs. Beaumont has requested that only she be allowed in the room at this time. Vanessa's face was a perfect mask of wifely concern. He's very confused right now. The doctors said he shouldn't be agitated. And after what happened with the dessert? She left the sentence hanging there like a noose. I drove home at 1:30 a.m. My house felt different when I walked in, smaller somehow. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table until dawn, replaying the night over and over. The crushed pill, the switched bowls, Thomas collapsing, Vanessa's accusation hanging in the air like smoke. At 6:47 a.m. my phone rang. Thomas's colleague, Dr. Peterson. Mrs. Beaumont, I thought you should know. They found a sedative in Thomas's bloodstream. A strong one. Temazepam, 30 milligrams. That's enough to cause significant respiratory depression in someone his size. My hand tightened on the phone. What does that mean? It means someone gave your son a very dangerous dose of medication. His voice dropped lower. Vanessa is telling the hospital staff that you have a history of confusion, that you've been mixing up medications. She showed them a document this morning. What kind of document? A power of attorney. Dated 6 weeks ago. It gives her medical decision-making authority over you in case of incapacity. I set the phone down carefully on the table. My hands had started shaking again. A power of attorney I had never signed. 6 weeks ago, I had been in Toledo visiting my sister. I had medical records, receipts, photographs, proving I wasn't even in Cleveland when that document was supposedly signed. But who would believe an old woman accused of poisoning her own son? I called my doctor's office when they opened at 8 a.m. The receptionist put me through immediately when I explained why I was calling. Mrs. Beaumont, Dr. Foster said. He had been my physician for 23 years. I heard about Thomas. I'm so sorry. How are you holding up? Someone forged a power of attorney in my name. And they're telling people I'm confused, that I mix up medications. I took a breath. Alan, have you ever prescribed temazepam for me? Silence. Then, no, never. You've always been adamant about avoiding sedatives because of your mother's issues with them. Could you check your records? See if anyone has requested prescriptions in my name? More silence, the sound of typing. Then Dr. Foster's voice came back, tight with anger. Evelyn, I'm looking at 3 prescription requests that came through our online portal over the past 2 months. All in your name. Temazepam, 30 milligrams. I didn't authorize any of them because they weren't consistent with your medication history, but someone else might have filled them anyway. I'm pulling up the pharmacy records now. More typing. Cleveland Heights Pharmacy filled 1 prescription 5 weeks ago. It says I authorized it, but Evelyn, I never saw this request. Someone bypassed our normal authorization system. I closed my eyes. Who picked up the prescription? The record says you did, but there's no signature verification because it was picked up at the drive-through window. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Facts I could prove. Facts I could demonstrate. Facts that might save me from whatever trap was closing around me. At 10:15 a.m., my doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood on my porch. The older one, a woman with gray hair pulled back tight, showed me her badge. Mrs. Evelyn Beaumont? I'm Detective Morris. This is Officer Santos. We need to ask you some questions about the incident last night. I let them in. Made coffee. Answered every question with the truth, knowing how insane it all sounded. Yes, I switched dessert bowls with my son. No, I don't know what was in the medication. Yes, I saw my daughter-in-law crush something over the dessert. No, I don't have proof. Mrs. Beaumont, Detective Morris said gently, your daughter-in-law filed a report this morning. She says you've been showing signs of dementia, forgetting conversations, repeating yourself, getting confused about dates and times. That's not true. She has documentation, letters from your doctor expressing concern about your cognitive decline. My doctor never wrote any such letters. Officer Santos shifted in his seat. She also provided a list of incidents over the past 6 months where family members had to intervene because of dangerous behavior, leaving the stove on, getting lost, driving to familiar places, accusing neighbors of theft. None of it was true, not a single word, but I could see how it looked. The confused old woman who didn't realize she was slipping, the concerned family trying to protect her from herself. Where were you on September 18th? Detective Morris asked. I'd need to check my calendar. She slid a paper across my table. This is a medical incident report from Cleveland General. It says you were brought in by your son after taking double your blood pressure medication by accident. I stared at the report. My name, my birth date, my address, a doctor's signature I didn't recognize. I was never at Cleveland General on September 18th. I was in Toledo visiting my sister Nancy. I have photos, receipts from restaurants, a speeding ticket I got on Route 90. For the first time, Detective Morris's expression shifted slightly. You have proof you were in Toledo that day? I can get it. I can prove I wasn't here for any of this. After the police left, I called Nancy. My hands were steadier now. Anger was replacing fear, and anger was useful. Anger could be shaped into action. Nancy, I need you to send me everything from my visit in September. Every photo, every receipt, every piece of evidence that I was with you. What's going on, Evie? I told her. All of it. The birthday party, the crushed pill, Thomas in the hospital, Vanessa's accusations, the forged documents, the medical reports about incidents that never happened. Nancy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Philip was here last month. What? Thomas's brother. He came to my house looking for you. Said he needed to talk about some family business. When I told him you'd gone home already, he seemed annoyed. He asked a lot of questions about your visit, whether you'd seemed confused or forgetful. The room felt suddenly colder. What did you tell him? I told him you were sharp as ever. That you remembered every detail of stories from 50 years ago. That you helped me organize my entire filing system. Nancy's voice hardened. Evie, I think he was trying to gather ammunition against you. At 2 p.m., I received an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Jennings & Associates, attorneys at law. The subject line read, Urgent matter regarding your welfare. The email was polite, professional, terrifying. It informed me that family members had expressed concern about my ability to live independently. That a guardianship hearing had been scheduled for the following Tuesday. That it was in my best interest to retain legal counsel immediately. Guardianship. The word felt like a trap closing around me. If they succeeded, Vanessa and Philip would control my life, my home, my money, every decision about my medical care, and I would have no way to prove what I had seen in that bathroom. I looked at the sender's name again, Jennings & Associates. Then I Googled the firm. The website was professional, sleek. They specialized in elder law, estate planning, guardianship proceedings. One of the partners was named Elizabeth Jennings. Her photo showed a woman in her 40s with blonde hair and an expensive suit. I clicked on her bio. Graduated from Case Western Law School in 2008, member of the Ohio State Bar Association, previously worked at Morrison & Hale. My breath caught. Morrison & Hale. That was Philip's firm. Thomas's brother was an attorney at Morrison & Hale. He had referred Vanessa to his former colleague. They had been planning this for weeks, maybe months, building a case against me, creating a paper trail of mental decline, forging documents, manufacturing incidents. The guardianship hearing wasn't just about control, it was about silence. If they succeeded, no one would believe anything I said about that night. I would be the confused old woman who imagined things, who made wild accusations against her loving family. And Vanessa would be free to try again, this time with no witnesses. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas's phone, but I knew it wasn't from him. Mother Evelyn, Thomas is asking for you. Please come to the hospital at 4 p.m., room 387. Come alone. We need to discuss your care going forward. I read the message 3 times. The words were wrong. Thomas had never called me Mother Evelyn in his life. It was always Mom or Ma. This was a trap. They wanted me at the hospital, in a controlled environment, where Vanessa could present her forged documents and concerned family narrative to doctors and social workers, where I would be the unreasonable old woman refusing to accept help. But I also needed to see my son. Needed to look him in the eye and find out if he believed what his wife was telling him, if he remembered anything about last night, if there was any part of him that still trusted his own mother. I arrived at Cleveland General at 3:47 p.m., 13 minutes early. Room 387 was on the 3rd floor in the cardiac care unit. The nurse at the desk nodded when I gave Thomas's name. Are you family? I'm his mother. She checked her computer. Mrs. Vanessa Beaumont left instructions that only she and Mr. Philip Beaumont are approved visitors. When did she leave those instructions? This morning at 7 a.m. before Thomas was fully conscious. Before he could speak for himself, I stood at that nurse's station for a long moment, weighing my options. I could make a scene, demand to see my son, risk giving them exactly the ammunition they wanted. Or I could leave, accept defeat, walk away from my only child while his wife poisoned him against me. Then I saw Dr. Foster stepping out of the elevator. He saw me at the same moment. His expression shifted from surprise to understanding in seconds. He walked toward me, his white coat flaring behind him, and said in a voice loud enough for the nurse to hear, "Mrs. Beaumont, I'm glad you're here. I need to discuss some critical inconsistencies in your son's medical records." The nurse looked uncertain. Dr. Foster pulled out his hospital credentials. "I'm consulting on this case. Mrs. Beaumont needs to be present for this conversation. Page Dr. Morrison and Mrs. Vanessa Beaumont immediately. Conference room 3, 5 minutes." He took my elbow and guided me down the hall before anyone could object. In the conference room, Dr. Foster closed the door. "Evelyn, I found something. The prescription for temazepam that was filled in your name? The digital signature was forged. I can prove it. The timestamp doesn't match my clinic schedule, and the prescribing physician ID number is off by 1 digit. Someone made a mistake when they faked it." My heart was pounding. "Does that mean? It means whoever tried to frame you isn't as clever as they think they are. And I'm going to make sure everyone in this hospital knows it." The door opened. Vanessa walked in, followed by Philip. Both of them stopped when they saw Dr. Foster. "What is she doing here?" Vanessa demanded. "I specifically said—" "Mrs. Beaumont has every right to be here," Dr. Foster said coldly, "especially given the fraudulent medical documents circulating in her name." Philip's expression went very still. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Doctor." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Someone forged my signature on prescription authorization forms. Someone created false medical incident reports. And someone filed those reports with this hospital to support a guardianship action against Mrs. Evelyn Beaumont." Vanessa's face had gone white. "That's absurd. We're trying to protect her." "From what?" I asked quietly. "From the truth about what you did to my son?" The silence in that conference room was absolute. Then Vanessa turned to Philip and said, "Get the documents, now." Robert's attorney was named Margaret Walsh. She worked out of an office on Prospect Avenue with windows overlooking Lake Erie. I called her at 8 a.m. Friday morning, 3 days after finding Robert's letter. "Mrs. Beaumont," she said when her assistant put me through, "I've been expecting your call for about 3 years. That stopped me. "You knew? Robert made me promise not to reach out unless you contacted me first. He wanted you to have the choice. But yes, I know about the inheritance clause. I drafted it myself. We met at 10 a.m. Margaret Walsh was 60, maybe 65, with steel gray hair and the kind of steady gaze that had probably intimidated opposing counsel for decades. Her office smelled like leather and old books. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The birthday party, the crushed pill, Thomas in the hospital, the forged medical documents, the guardianship petition, the power of attorney I never signed, Sarah Mitchell's photograph, Dr. Foster's discovery of the fraudulent prescriptions, Thomas's text message saying his memory was returning. Margaret took notes on a yellow legal pad. Her expression never changed, but I watched her handwriting get sharper, more forceful with each revelation. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Mrs. Beaumont, what your daughter-in-law attempted is attempted murder, not endangerment, not reckless conduct, murder." The word hung in the air between us. The dosage Dr. Foster described, 30 milligrams of temazepam, would be dangerous for anyone. But you weigh what, 120 pounds? That dosage was calculated to kill you. The only reason you're sitting here is because your son ate it instead, and he weighs 220. My mouth had gone dry. "You're saying she meant to kill you, yes, and then use the guardianship documents to control the narrative. Confused elderly woman accidentally overdoses on medication she shouldn't have been taking. Very tragic. Very convenient." Margaret pulled a file from her desk drawer. "Robert came to me 4 years ago, not 3. He'd been observing Vanessa for a year before he added that clause to his will. He hired a private investigator." She slid the file across the desk. Inside were surveillance photos, bank records, employment histories, and on the first page, a driver's license from Nevada with Vanessa's face but a different name. "Vanessa Marie Kirkland," I read aloud. "She's from Las Vegas? She told Thomas she was from Portland, Oregon, right?" "Yes. She's never lived in Portland. Vanessa Kirkland, age 48, has 3 prior marriages, all to older, wealthy men. All ended when the men died unexpectedly. 2 were ruled natural causes. 1 was never investigated because it happened in the Philippines and the body was cremated before questions could be asked. I stared at the photographs. Vanessa at 28, getting married to a man who looked 60. Vanessa at 35, in widow's weeds at a funeral. Vanessa at 41, signing documents at what looked like a lawyer's office. Robert knew this. He knew she was dangerous. He couldn't prove she'd killed anyone, but the pattern was clear. He tried to warn Thomas gently, but Thomas was in love. Yes. So Robert did what he could. He made sure you were protected financially, and he made sure I knew to watch for signs of trouble. Margaret pulled out another document. This is a petition I'm filing today with the probate court. It invokes the clause in Robert's will and formally removes Thomas and Philip from any inheritance claims. Everything comes to you. The house in Shaker Heights, the investment accounts, the life insurance, all of it. Approximately $8 million. The number hit me like cold water. I'd known Robert had done well, but we'd lived modestly. I'd had no idea the estate was worth that much. Once this petition is filed, Vanessa will know she's lost. The guardianship scheme becomes worthless. You can't control someone's money if they don't have any claim to it. What will she do? Margaret's expression darkened. That's what worries me. She's failed twice now. First when you switched the plates, then when her guardianship documents fell apart. Desperate people do desperate things. Thomas is still in the hospital. Is he safe there? I thought about Vanessa's access, her ability to visit him any time, the nurses who believed she was a devoted wife. I don't know. Margaret picked up her phone. I'm calling the hospital administration and the Cleveland police. As of right now, Thomas Beaumont is under protective observation. No visitors except approved medical staff. Vanessa Kirkland Beaumont is specifically barred from his room. While she made those calls, I sat in her leather chair and tried to process everything. 3 previous marriages, 3 dead husbands, a pattern of targeting wealthy older men. Robert had known, or at least suspected, and he'd tried to protect us the only way he could. But he couldn't have predicted that Vanessa would try to kill me directly, that she would move from patient gold digging to active murder. Margaret hung up. Hospital security is being notified now. Police are sending an officer to Thomas's room. We need to move fast on the criminal side. Do you have Sarah Mitchell's photograph? I pulled out my phone and showed her. Margaret studied it, then forwarded it to herself. This is good. It places Vanessa with the medication at the scene. Combined with Dr. Foster's testimony about the forged prescriptions and the hospital toxicology report, we have a solid case. What about the guardianship documents? Those actually help us. They show premeditation. She was building a narrative to explain your death before it happened. That turns this from impulsive to calculated. My phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Foster. Evelyn, I've been reviewing the pharmacy records more carefully. The temazepam prescription that was filled under your name? It was filled 3 times over 6 weeks. 3 separate 30 milliliter bottles. The pharmacist flagged it as unusual, but the system showed my authorization, so they filled it. If Vanessa used 1 pill on the dessert, she still has approximately 85 pills. That's enough to kill 28 people your size. Please be careful. I showed the text to Margaret. Her jaw tightened. We need to find those pills. If she still has them, she could try again. Or she could destroy them to eliminate evidence. They'd be at Thomas's house, in Vanessa's possession. Then we need a search warrant. Today. Margaret made 3 more calls. First to the Cleveland police detective handling the hospital report. Then to an assistant district attorney she apparently went to law school with. Then to a judge who agreed to expedite the warrant application. By 2 p.m. we had the warrant. By 3 p.m. police were at Thomas's house in Cleveland Heights. By 3:45 p.m., they'd found 2 prescription bottles of temazepam in Vanessa's bathroom vanity, hidden inside a box of tampons. 58 pills total. They also found something else. A burner phone with text messages to Philip. It's done. She'll be dead by midnight. We proceed with guardianship Monday. Don't lose your nerve now. The text was sent the day of my birthday party. At 6:30 p.m., 90 minutes before dinner. Margaret showed me the messages on her laptop screen. The police had sent her photographs of everything they'd seized. Philip knew, I said. Thomas's own brother helped plan this. He's complicit in conspiracy to commit murder. He'll be arrested tonight. I thought about Philip, the quiet one, always in Thomas's shadow, the lawyer who'd never quite made partner, the brother who'd stood at Robert's funeral and told me everything would be okay. That family took care of family. He'd meant it, just not the way I'd thought. My phone rang. Thomas's number, but this time I recognized the ringtone I'd set years ago. It was really him calling. Mom. His voice was stronger than yesterday, clearer. They told me about the security guard outside my room. They told me about the warrant. Is it true? Did Vanessa really— Yes. Silence. Then a sound like a sob being choked back. And Philip? He was part of it. More silence. I could hear hospital sounds in the background. Monitors beeping. Someone paging a doctor. The distant sound of a television. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I brought her into our lives. I married her. I defended her when you— Thomas, listen to me. This isn't your fault. She's a professional. She's done this before. Your father knew something was wrong. He tried to protect us. He did protect us. Dad knew? I told him about Robert's letter, about the inheritance clause, about Margaret Walsh and the investigator's file. I told him about Vanessa's real name, her 3 previous marriages, her 3 dead husbands. I lived with a serial killer, Thomas said finally. I slept next to her. I trusted her with everything. You survived her. That's what matters. When can I see you? They won't let me leave until tomorrow, but Mom, I need to see you. I need to— His voice broke completely. I'll be there first thing in the morning, the moment visiting hours start. We'll get through this together. After we hung up, Margaret looked at me across her desk. Mrs. Beaumont, there's one more thing we need to discuss. Vanessa has been notified that she's barred from the hospital. She knows about the search warrant by now. The police have an APB out for her arrest, but she hasn't been located yet. You think she'll run? I think she'll do whatever gives her the best chance of survival. And right now, that might mean eliminating the witnesses who can testify against her. Thomas is protected at the hospital. Yes, but you're not. Margaret opened her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. This is a friend of mine, former FBI. He runs a private security company now. I've already called him. He's sending someone to stay with you until Vanessa is in custody. That's not necessary. Evelyn, she tried to kill you once. She failed. She's desperate, cornered, and still has access to enough sedatives to kill a dozen people. This is absolutely necessary. The bodyguard arrived at my house at 6 p.m. His name was Ray Porter, 40s, ex-military bearing, the kind of presence that made you feel simultaneously safer and more aware of danger. He checked every window, every door, every possible entry point. You'll stay in the house tonight, he said. Tomorrow we'll transport you to the hospital to see your son. After that, we reassess based on whether Mrs. Beaumont has been apprehended. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with Robert's letter on the coffee table, reading it over and over, trying to find comfort in his words, trying to believe that we were finally safe. At 3:47 a.m., my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You think you're safe. But I know where you are. I know where Thomas is. And families should stay together. Forever. I showed it to Ray. He immediately called the police, who traced the number to a disposable phone purchased with cash at a Cleveland drugstore 3 hours ago. Vanessa was still in the city, still hunting, and she wasn't finished yet. Ray Porter woke me at 5:47 a.m. We have a situation. 6 months after Vanessa's arrest, I sat in a courtroom on the 9th floor of the Cuyahoga County Justice Center. The room smelled like furniture polish and old paper. Thomas sat beside me, his hand gripping mine so tight I could feel his pulse through his palm. Vanessa walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit. Her hair had grown out, showing dark roots under the blonde. Without makeup, she looked older, harder. She didn't look at us. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the state recommends the maximum sentence. The defendant has demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 2 decades. 3 previous husbands died under suspicious circumstances. We've identified 14 additional potential victims she was researching. This was not a crime of passion. This was a calculated, systematic campaign of murder for profit. Vanessa's public defender argued for leniency, mental health issues, childhood trauma, rehabilitation potential. The words sounded hollow in that wood-paneled room. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Thornton, listened without expression. Then she spoke. Mrs. Kirkland, you are a predator. You selected victims based on their vulnerability, their loneliness, their capacity to trust. You married them. You made them believe they were loved. And then you killed them. Or tried to. Judge Thornton looked directly at me. Mrs. Beaumont survived your attempt because she was more observant than you anticipated. Because she loved her son enough to protect him. even when it meant risking her own reputation. Her courage doesn't diminish your crime. It magnifies it. Vanessa Kirkland was sentenced to 45 years without possibility of parole, 3 counts of attempted murder, 14 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges. She would be 93 years old before she could apply for release. As they led her away, she finally looked at Thomas, not with remorse or apology, with something closer to curiosity, like she was studying a specimen that had escaped her collection. Thomas didn't look away. He met her eyes and said nothing. That silence said everything. Outside the courthouse, Margaret Walsh shook my hand. "It's done. You're safe. Thomas is safe. And every potential victim on that USB drive has been notified and warned." "What about Philip?" Margaret's expression tightened. "His sentencing is next month. He cooperated fully, so the DA reduced the charges. He'll likely get 7 to 10 years. Thomas had been silent since we left the courtroom. Now he spoke. I don't want to see him. When he gets out. I don't want him at family dinners or holidays or anything. Is that wrong?" I squeezed his hand. "No, that's self-preservation. He's my brother. He chose money over your life. Biology doesn't obligate you to forgive that." We drove to my house in Shaker Heights. The house Robert had left me. The house that was truly mine now. Thomas had been staying with me since his discharge from the hospital 2 weeks after Vanessa's arrest. His own house, the one he'd shared with her, was on the market. He couldn't live there anymore. "I think I'll buy something smaller," he'd told me last week. "A condo, maybe? Something that's just mine, with no memories attached." Now he sat at my kitchen table while I made tea. The late afternoon sun came through the window, catching the dust motes in the air. Normal, peaceful, safe. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always. How do you do it? How do you trust people again after something like this?" I thought about that question. About Sarah Mitchell, who'd risked her job to give me that photograph. About Dr. Foster, who'd fought for me when I had no proof. About Margaret Walsh and Robert's letter and the kindness of strangers who'd become allies. "I don't think trust is something you give all at once anymore," I said finally. "I think you give it in small pieces. You watch how people handle those pieces, and you adjust accordingly." That sounds exhausting. It is, but so is living in fear. Thomas smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in weeks. "When did you get so wise?" "When I sold my engagement ring to pay your medical school tuition and realized I was strong enough to survive anything." He blinked. "You what?" I told him the story. The pawn shop on Euclid Avenue, the $2,400 that wasn't enough, the pearl necklace I'd sold the next week. All the sacrifices he'd never known about because I'd never wanted him to feel guilty for pursuing his dreams. "Mom, I had no idea. You never said." "Of course I didn't. You were my son. You still are. That's what parents do. But I chose Vanessa over you. I let her isolate you. I defended her when you tried to warn me. You were manipulated by a professional. That's different from not loving me." Thomas put his head down on the table and cried. Not the desperate sobs from the hospital, but something quieter, deeper. The kind of crying that comes when you finally feel safe enough to break. I let him cry, rubbed his back the way I had when he was small, and when he was finished, I made him eat the soup I'd prepared that morning, because that's also what mothers do. 3 months later, Thomas moved into his new condo, a 2-bedroom in Cleveland Heights with a balcony overlooking a park. He invited me to the housewarming. Just us. No party, no crowd, just a mother and son eating pizza on his new couch. "I started seeing someone," he said between bites. "A therapist, Dr. Morrison. She specializes in trauma recovery." "That's good. She says I have to forgive myself, that I was a victim too." He looked at me. "Do you believe that?" "I believe you were both. Victim and participant. Human beings are complicated. We can be more than one thing at once." She also says I should probably not date anyone for at least a year, maybe 2. Dr. Morrison sounds smart. Thomas laughed. "Yeah, she's terrifying and I kind of love her." He paused, in a completely professional therapeutic way. "Of course." We finished the pizza, watched the sunset over the park, and for the first time since that birthday party, the silence between us felt comfortable instead of weighted with everything we weren't saying. Philip called me once, from prison. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Evelyn, it's Philip. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what I did was..." A long pause. I was desperate. The firm was letting me go. I had nothing. And Vanessa, she made it sound so reasonable. So easy. Just some paperwork. Just a guardianship. Just protecting you from yourself. I didn't know she was going to... He stopped. Started again. That's a lie. I knew. Maybe not the details. But I knew something bad was going to happen to you. And I let it happen because I wanted the money more than I wanted you to be safe. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But I needed you to hear it anyway. The voicemail ended. I deleted it. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear Philip's apologies. Maybe someday I'd be able to sit across from him and see my husband's brother instead of the man who'd helped plot my murder. But not today. Not this year. Maybe not ever. And I was learning that was okay. Forgiveness wasn't mandatory. Neither was reconciliation. Sometimes survival meant building walls and keeping them strong. Thomas asked me once if I'd talk to Philip. I told him no. Does that make me a bad person? Thomas asked. That I'm relieved you're not trying to fix things with him? No. That makes you honest. I sold Robert's cufflinks and pocket watch, used the money to establish a scholarship fund at Thomas's medical school. The Evelyn Beaumont Scholarship for students who needed financial help to complete their education. The first recipient was a 32-year-old woman who'd worked as a janitor for 8 years while taking night classes. When they asked me to speak at the awards ceremony, I told the story about the pawn shop, about the engagement ring, about the choice between my dreams and my son's dreams, and how I'd never once regretted choosing him. Thomas sat in the front row and cried again. Later, he told me it was the first time he'd understood what love actually looked like. Not manipulation, not control, not transaction, just sacrifice that expected nothing in return. On my 76th birthday, Thomas took me to dinner. Not a party, just the two of us at a quiet restaurant on Lake Erie. We ate fish and drank wine and watched the boats in the harbor. I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a ring, not expensive, not flashy. A simple silver band with a small pearl. My pearl, he told me. The one from the necklace I'd sold. He'd tracked it down somehow, had it made into a ring. I can't give you back the necklace, he said, or the engagement ring, or the years Vanessa stole from us, but I can give you this. And I can give you my promise that I will never again choose anyone over you, that I will listen when you speak, that I will trust your judgment, that I will be the son you deserved all along. I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. You already are, I told him. 6 months after that, Thomas introduced me to someone. Not a girlfriend. He was keeping his therapist's advice. A friend. A colleague from the hospital. A woman named Rachel, who was funny and kind and had no ulterior motives beyond enjoying Thomas's company. We had coffee together, the three of us. Rachel talked about her work in pediatrics, about the foster children she volunteered with, about her love of terrible movies. She didn't try too hard. She didn't flatter me. She just existed, comfortably, in the space between us. After she left, Thomas asked what I thought. I think she's real, I said. And I think that's what matters. I was 76 years old. My son was healing. My bank account was secure. My house was mine. I had peace, safety, and the knowledge that I'd survived something designed to destroy me. Vanessa was in prison, where she would stay until she was too old to hurt anyone else. Philip was serving his sentence, learning that loyalty had a price. Thomas was building a life based on truth instead of manipulation. And me, I was learning to live without fear. I took up painting, watercolors mostly. Terrible at first, then slightly less terrible. I joined a book club, made friends who knew nothing about my past except what I chose to share. I volunteered at a women's shelter, helping other survivors understand that they weren't alone, that survival was possible, that they were stronger than whatever had tried to break them. 1 year after Vanessa's sentencing, I stood in my kitchen making soup. Thomas was coming for dinner with Rachel, who had slowly, carefully, become more than just a friend, who had asked permission before each step forward, who had met Thomas's grief and fear with patience. My phone rang. Margaret Walsh. Evelyn, I thought you'd want to know. Vanessa filed an appeal. It was denied this morning. The sentence stands. Good. There's something else. The FBI contacted me. They're investigating 3 unsolved deaths in Nevada, Oregon, and the Philippines. They believe Vanessa was responsible. They're asking if you'd be willing to testify if they bring charges. I thought about those 3 men, about their families, who'd never gotten justice, about the questions they still carried. "Yes," I said, "I'll testify. Because that's what survivors do. We bear witness. We tell the truth. We refuse to let predators win through silence." Thomas arrived with flowers and Rachel brought wine. We ate soup and bread and laughed at something stupid on television. Normal, mundane, safe. This was what Vanessa had tried to take from me. Not money, not property, not even my life. She'd tried to take this. The simple pleasure of dinner with my son and the woman he was learning to love. The knowledge that tomorrow would come and I would be here to see it. She'd failed. I was still here, still standing, still whole, and that was the best revenge of all. I followed him to the kitchen window. Outside, in the pre-dawn darkness, a car was parked across the street. A dark sedan with tinted windows that hadn't been there when I'd finally fallen asleep at 4 a.m. How long has it been there? 17 minutes. No one's gotten out. Engines running. License plates are covered with mud, deliberately obscured. Ray had already called the police. They arrived 8 minutes later, 2 patrol cars with lights off, approaching from opposite directions. The sedan's engine roared to life. It pulled away fast, tires squealing, turning the corner before the police could block it. But not before Ray got a photograph of the driver through his telephoto lens. He showed it to me on his camera screen. Even in the grainy pre-dawn light, I recognized her, Vanessa, watching my house, waiting for something. The police found the sedan abandoned 3 blocks away, stolen from a hospital parking garage 2 days ago. Inside, they found a small leather case, medical supplies, 3 syringes pre-filled with clear liquid. The toxicology report came back an hour later. Temazepam in solution, 90 milligrams per syringe. 3 times the lethal dose for someone my size. "She was going to inject you," Detective Morris said when she came to my house at 7 a.m. "Probably planned to break in, make it look like you'd taken the medication yourself." Another confused elderly woman making a tragic mistake. But she knew about the bodyguard. She saw him through the window. Which is why she didn't try. But Mrs. Beaumont, she's escalating. She's desperate. The longer she's free, the more dangerous she becomes. At 8:15 a.m., Ray and I left for the hospital under police escort. 2 unmarked cars, 1 in front and 1 behind. The drive took 12 minutes instead of the usual 20. Ray kept checking his mirrors, his hand never far from the weapon I'd seen holstered under his jacket. Cleveland General looked different in morning light, less threatening. Just a building full of sick people and the doctors trying to save them. The officer stationed outside Thomas's room checked my ID 3 times before letting me pass. Thomas was sitting up in bed. He'd shaved. His color was better, though his eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. When he saw me, something broke in his face. "Mom." I went to him, held him while he sobbed into my shoulder like he hadn't done since he was 12 years old and his father had died. Not Robert, his biological father, who'd left when Thomas was 6. The first man to abandon him, though not the last to betray him. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." "I know, it's okay, you're safe now. She tried to kill you. She tried to kill my mother and I defended her. I chose her over you. I let her convince me you were the problem." I pulled back to look at his face. "Thomas, listen to me. She's a professional. She's been doing this for years. 3 other men believed her lies. 3 other families lost someone they loved. You survived her. That's what matters. Barely. If you hadn't switched those plates, but I did. And now we stop her from doing this to anyone else." A knock on the door. Detective Morris entered, followed by a man I didn't recognize. Late 50s, gray suit, the weary expression of someone who'd seen too much. "Mr. Beaumont, Mrs. Beaumont, this is Assistant District Attorney James Caldwell. He's handling the case against your wife." Caldwell shook Thomas's hand, then mine. "I need to ask you some questions, Mr. Beaumont, about your marriage, about the days leading up to the birthday party. I know this is difficult, but anything you remember could help us build the case." Thomas nodded. "Whatever you need." For the next hour, Thomas answered questions. How he'd met Vanessa 4 years ago at a medical conference. How she'd told him her name was Vanessa Kirkland, that she was an OR nurse from Portland. How she'd been charming, attentive, perfect. How quickly they'd married. 6 months, Thomas said. Looking back, she rushed everything. But I was lonely after my divorce, and she made me feel needed. Special. "Did she ever ask about your finances?" "Not directly. But she was always interested in my practice, how much surgeons make, what my retirement accounts looked like. She made it seem like practical planning for our future." Did she have access to your accounts? We had a joint account, but I kept my investment account separate. She wanted me to add her to those too. Said married couples should share everything. I was going to do it, actually. I had the paperwork ready. When? 2 weeks before Mom's birthday. I watched realization dawn on Thomas's face. She was accelerating the timeline. She was going to make her move soon anyway. Caldwell nodded. We believe the birthday party was an opportunity. Your mother was isolated, vulnerable. If the plan had worked, Vanessa would have been the grieving daughter-in-law. You would have inherited everything from your father's estate, and she would have had access to all of it within months. And then I would have been next, Thomas said quietly. An accident? Maybe a medication error. Something that wouldn't raise suspicion. Based on the pattern with her previous husbands? Yes. The room went very quiet. Thomas stared at his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I loved her. I actually loved her. How could I be that stupid? You weren't stupid, I said. You were human. You wanted love. You wanted partnership. She exploited that. Your mother's right, Caldwell said. Vanessa Kirkland is a predator. She studies her victims, identifies their vulnerabilities, and uses them. The only mistake you made was being kind. Another knock. This time Margaret Walsh entered, looking grim. Philip's been arrested. They picked him up at his office 20 minutes ago. Thomas's head snapped up. My brother knew? Margaret pulled out her phone and showed him the text messages. Thomas read them, his face draining of color with each line. He helped plan it. He knew she was going to kill Mom, and he... Thomas couldn't finish the sentence. He's being charged with conspiracy to commit murder and fraud, Margaret said. The DA is offering him a deal if he testifies against Vanessa. He's considering it. Of course he is, Thomas said bitterly. Philip always looks out for Philip. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, different from last night's. Just 3 words. Check your email. I opened my email app. 1 new message from a generic Gmail address. No subject line. Just a video attachment. Don't open that, Ray said sharply. But Detective Morris already had her laptop out. She downloaded the file onto a secure device and played it. Vanessa's face filled the screen. She was somewhere dark, maybe a car or a storage unit. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged. She looked nothing like the polished woman who'd crushed that pill 3 days ago. Evelyn, Thomas, by now you know everything, or you think you do. Her voice was flat, emotionless. I want you to understand something. I'm not a monster. I'm a survivor. I do what I need to do to survive in a world that discards women like me. She leaned closer to the camera. I gave you chances, Evelyn. I gave you opportunities to make this easier. You could have eaten that dessert. You could have died peacefully, surrounded by family. But you had to be clever. You had to switch the plates. Thomas made a sound like a wounded animal. And Thomas, my sweet, stupid Thomas, I did care about you, in my way. You were kind. You were generous. You would have been a good husband if you'd just died when you were supposed to. Detective Morris stopped the video. That's enough. No, Thomas said. Play the rest. Margaret hesitated, then nodded to Morris, who resumed playback. You can't stop me, Vanessa continued. You can put out all the alerts you want, send all the police you want. I've disappeared before. I'll disappear again. And maybe I'll come back in 5 years, or 10, with a new name and a new story. And maybe by then, you'll have forgotten to be careful. The video ended. The room was silent except for the monitor's beeping. Then Thomas spoke, his voice steady for the first time since I'd arrived. She's wrong. We won't forget. And she won't disappear. Mr. Beaumont, Caldwell started. No, listen. She's arrogant. That video? She sent it because she needs us to know she's smarter than us. She can't help herself. She's been getting away with this for so long that she believes she's untouchable. Thomas looked at Detective Morris. That video had metadata, right? Location data? Morris smiled grimly. We're tracing it now. 20 minutes later, they had her. A motel off Route 2, 12 miles outside Cleveland. She'd been sloppy, sent the video from her phone, probably never imagining the police could triangulate it that fast. The arrest went smoothly. No drama, no chase. Vanessa Kirkland opened the motel room door and saw 6 armed officers. She didn't run, she didn't fight. She just smiled and said, I want my lawyer. They found everything in her room, the remaining temazepam pills, Thomas's missing phone, a passport with her photo, but a different name. a USB drive containing files on 14 different men, complete with financial records, medical information, and detailed timelines. 14 potential victims, Caldwell told us later that day. Some she'd already approached. Some were still in the research phase. She was building a pipeline. Thomas and I sat in his hospital room long after everyone else left. Ray waited outside, giving us privacy. The sun was setting, painting the walls orange and gold. "What happens now?" Thomas asked. "You heal. You testify. You rebuild your life. How? How do I come back from this?" I took his hand. "The same way I came back from thinking I'd lost you. One day at a time. One choice at a time. You choose to be better than what she tried to make you. And us? Can we fix what she broke?" I thought about Robert's letter, about the years of sacrifice, about selling my engagement ring to pay for Thomas's education, about every birthday and holiday and ordinary Tuesday when I'd chosen to love my son even when he'd made it hard. "She didn't break us, Thomas. She tried. But families don't break that easily. Not real families." He squeezed my hand. "I don't deserve you. No, you deserve better. You deserve a mother who doesn't let her son marry a serial killer." He laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. "That's not your fault. And choosing her wasn't yours. We both did the best we could with what we knew. Now we know better." My phone buzzed. Margaret Walsh. Phillips talking. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. He's giving them everything. Bank records, communications, timeline. He says Vanessa approached him 3 months ago with the plan. Promised him half your inheritance if he helped. Does Thomas know his brother tried to kill him too? The dosage was meant for you. But yes, Philip knew Thomas would eat from your plate if you switched. He knew, and he didn't stop it. I looked at my son, sleeping now, finally peaceful. I thought about Philip, probably in a cell somewhere, realizing too late that loyalty to greed had destroyed everything. And I thought about Vanessa, who'd spent years perfecting murder, who'd believed herself untouchable, sitting in custody because she couldn't resist sending one last message. Pride had destroyed her. The same pride that made her film that video, that made her unable to simply disappear, that made her need us to know how clever she was. In the end, she'd caught herself. We arrived at the airport, and I saw my daughter-in-law waving, smiling. I was about to get out of the taxi, but the driver locked the doors. "Don't get out," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You are being used as a mule." He looked terrified, and in that moment, so was I. 5 minutes later, I understood why. And I understood that the woman I had trusted with my son's heart had been planning to destroy my life. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The Miami heat hit the taxi windows like a wall. I had just spent 2 weeks in Colombia visiting my grandchildren, the best 2 weeks I'd had since my husband Harold passed 4 years ago. Vanessa had arranged everything, the flights, the hotel near her parents' house, even a red suitcase full of gifts for the family back home that she had packed herself. "I don't understand," I said to the driver. My hands were shaking. "What do you mean, a mule?" He didn't answer. He was watching the rearview mirror, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Then I heard the engines. 4 black SUVs appeared from nowhere, surrounding the taxi at full speed. Men in tactical vests poured out, weapons drawn. I screamed, but they didn't come for me. They ran past the taxi toward the passenger pickup area, where Vanessa stood frozen beside her silver Mercedes. One moment she was waving at me with that perfect smile. The next, she was face down on the concrete with her arms twisted behind her back. "Federal agents! Don't move!" Vanessa screamed. Not words, just sound, pure terror. Her designer sunglasses skittered across the pavement. Her silk blouse tore as they yanked her to her feet. The operation leader walked to her Mercedes, popped the trunk, and pulled out a red suitcase, the same color as the one in my hands. He opened it right there on the curb. Even from 30 feet away, I could see the white packages inside, wrapped in plastic, stacked like bricks. 15 kilos, someone shouted. "We got it." The taxi driver finally unlocked the doors. He turned to face me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Authority. Control. "Mrs. Callahan, my name is Agent Daniel Torres, DEA. I need you to come with me." I couldn't move. I was still holding the suitcase Vanessa had given me. The one with the souvenirs and coffee and hand-woven blankets from Bogota. Or what I thought were souvenirs. The suitcase, I whispered. She switched them. She gave me this one at the airport in Colombia. She said it was lighter, easier for me to carry. Torres nodded grimly. We know. That's why we intercepted you. The suitcase you're holding is clean. She switched it last minute because our informant tipped her off about increased security. She panicked and decided to bring the shipment herself. But I was supposed to... You were supposed to walk through customs with 15 kilos of cocaine in your bag, Mrs. Callahan. You would have been arrested, tried and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. I looked at the red suitcase in my lap. Then I looked at Vanessa, now being loaded into the back of an SUV. Mascara running down her face, still screaming. My daughter-in-law, the mother of my grandchildren, the woman I had welcomed into my family 12 years ago. She had tried to send me to prison for the rest of my life. Agent Torres drove me to a federal building downtown. The interrogation room was cold and gray, with a metal table and 2 chairs. He brought me water and gave me time to stop shaking before he started asking questions. How long have you known Vanessa Reyes Callahan? 12 years. She married my son Ryan in 2012. Did you know about her involvement in drug trafficking? God, no. I thought she was a translator. She works for an import company. Worked, I guess. She speaks Spanish and Portuguese. The import company is a front, Torres said. It's been moving cocaine from Colombia to Miami for at least 8 years. Vanessa is one of their key operatives. 8 years. That was longer than I had known her. Torres slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs. Vanessa with men I didn't recognize, standing beside shipping containers, sitting in expensive restaurants, handing over envelopes thick with cash. We've been watching her for 2 years, Torres said. This was supposed to be her biggest shipment. 15 kilos, street value over $400,000. And I was going to carry it through customs. You fit the profile perfectly. 64 years old, retired nurse, visiting grandchildren in Colombia. No criminal record, no flags in the system. Customs would have waved you right through. I thought about the trip. How Vanessa had insisted on booking everything herself. How she had driven me to the airport in Bogota and walked me all the way to the gate. How she had handed me the red suitcase with a kiss on the cheek and said, "See you soon, Mom." She had called me Mom. What happens now? I asked. Vanessa is being processed. She'll be charged with drug trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted use of an unwitting courier. That last one is you. She tried to use you as a mule without your knowledge or consent. And my son? Does Ryan know? Torres paused. That pause told me everything. We're still investigating his level of involvement. What does that mean? It means we've found some concerning financial records. Deposits into your son's account that don't match his income. Large purchases that don't make sense on a marketing manager's salary. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. Ryan would never, he couldn't. Mrs. Callahan, I know this is difficult, but we need to determine whether your son was a knowing participant in his wife's operation or another victim like yourself. I thought about Ryan, my only child, the boy I had raised alone after his father walked out when he was 6. I had worked double shifts for years to give him everything, good schools, college, a chance at a better life. He had married Vanessa after knowing her for only 4 months. I had been surprised but supportive. She was beautiful, successful, and she made him happy. What more could a mother ask for? Now I understood why Ryan had been so eager to marry her, why they had moved into that big house in Coral Gables 2 years ago, why Vanessa always had cash for vacations, for cars, for the private school where my grandchildren went. It wasn't success. It was cocaine money. I want to help, I told Torres. Whatever you need from me. Are you sure? This could get complicated. Vanessa has lawyers, good ones. They're going to try to shift blame, and you might be a convenient target. I don't care. She tried to destroy my life. She used me. I closed my eyes. Ryan's face appeared in my mind. 5 years old, handing me a crayon drawing of our family. 22, graduating from college, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. 35, holding his newborn daughter, tears in his eyes. If Ryan was involved, I said slowly, then he needs to face the consequences too. Torres nodded. We'll need you to make a formal statement, and we'd like you to stay in Miami for the next few weeks while we build the case. I have nowhere else to go. My grandchildren. My voice broke. What happens to them? Child Services will assess the situation. If both parents are incarcerated, they'll need a guardian. I'm their grandmother. Then you should start thinking about whether you're prepared to raise 2 children under 10. I looked at the photographs spread across the table. Vanessa smiling beside drug dealers. Vanessa counting money. Vanessa living a double life while I brought her casseroles on Sundays and babysat her children whenever she asked. She had been planning this for years. She had married my son to get access to me, a respectable elderly woman who could walk through customs without suspicion. I was a tool to her, a prop in her operation, and now I might have to raise her children while she rotted in prison. The thought should have horrified me. Instead, it felt like clarity, like the moment you finally understand a math problem that's been confusing you for hours. Vanessa had tried to take everything from me, my freedom, my reputation, my golden years. Instead, she had given me something unexpected, a purpose. My grandchildren were innocent. Whatever their parents had done, Emma and Lucas deserved a chance at a normal life. If I had to fight Vanessa's lawyers and the court system and even my own son to give them that chance, I would. I'm 64 years old, I told Torres. I was supposed to be planning cruises and visiting friends. Instead, I'm going to spend my retirement raising my grandchildren and testifying against my own family. I'm sorry, Mrs. Callahan. Don't be. I'm not the victim here, or at least I won't let myself become one. I straightened my shoulders. When do we start? Torres almost smiled. Tomorrow morning. Get some rest tonight. We've booked you a hotel near the office. He stood to escort me out, but I stopped at the door. Agent Torres, the taxi, when you picked me up at the airport, how did you know I wasn't involved? We didn't, at first. But when Vanessa switched the suitcases at the last minute, we realized she was protecting the shipment, not you. An accomplice would have been warned. You weren't. So if she hadn't panicked, you'd be in a holding cell right now, facing federal charges. I nodded slowly. Vanessa's paranoia had saved me. Her fear of getting caught had led her to make the one mistake that proved my innocence. That night, alone in my hotel room, I called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. Mom, are you okay? I heard about Vanessa. They won't let me see her. Ryan, listen to me carefully. Did you know? Know what? Mom, what's going on? Did you know your wife was trafficking drugs? Did you know she was planning to use me as a mule? Mom, it's complicated. Just don't talk to anyone until I can get a lawyer. He knew. My son, my baby, the child I had sacrificed everything for. He knew what his wife was doing, and he had let her try to destroy me anyway. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and cried. Not for Vanessa, who deserved whatever punishment she received. Not even for myself, though I had come within minutes of losing my freedom. I cried for the family I thought I had, the son I thought I knew, the life I thought I was living. All of it had been a lie, and tomorrow I was going to help burn it all down. I wiped my eyes and looked at the photo on my phone. Emma and Lucas at their school play last Christmas, dressed as angels. They were smiling, innocent, unaware that their world was about to collapse. I'll protect you, I whispered to the screen, no matter what it costs. Outside, the Miami night was warm and humid. Somewhere across the city, Vanessa was in a cell, Ryan was probably on the phone with criminal lawyers, and federal agents were building a case that would tear apart what remained of my family. And I was going to help them, because some betrayals are too deep to forgive, some lies are too big to overlook, and some grandmothers are a lot tougher than their daughters-in-law ever expected. The red suitcase sat in the corner of my room, the clean one, the one with the coffee and blankets and souvenirs, evidence of what Vanessa had almost done to me. I would keep it as a reminder of how close I came, of how far I still had to go. Tomorrow the real work would begin. The federal building smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. I had been there for 6 hours, answering the same questions in different ways, while Agent Torres and his team built their case against Vanessa. "Walk me through the trip again," Torres said, "from the moment you arrived in Bogotá." I closed my eyes and tried to remember. Vanessa's parents picked me up at the airport. They seemed normal, happy to see me, excited about my visit. They drove me to their house in the north of the city. "Did you notice anything unusual about the house? Visitors? Packages?" It was just a regular home. Nice neighborhood. The grandchildren were there, Emma and Lucas. They were so happy to see me. My voice cracked on the children's names. I had spent 2 weeks playing with them, reading them stories, watching them sleep. They had no idea their mother was a drug trafficker. They had no idea their grandmother had almost gone to prison because of her. "What about Vanessa? How often did you see her during the trip?" "Every day. She took time off work to be with me." I laughed bitterly. I thought it was sweet. Now I realized she was probably making sure everything went according to plan. Torres slid another folder across the table. "We've been tracking Vanessa's operation for 2 years. This wasn't her first time using an unwitting courier." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs and reports. At least 8 different people, mostly elderly women, photographed at various airports. Some were holding red suitcases identical to mine. These women all traveled to Colombia in the past 2 years. Most of them visited family members who turned out to be connected to the cartel. 7 of them made it through customs without incident. 1 was caught in Atlanta. What happened to her? She's serving 15 years in federal prison. She was 73 years old. I stared at the woman's mugshot. She looked like someone I might meet at church. Gray hair, kind eyes, bewildered expression. She probably had grandchildren too. She didn't know, did she? We believe she was as unaware as you were. But her public defender wasn't very good, and the prosecution argued she must have known. The jury agreed. That could have been me. That would have been me if Vanessa hadn't panicked at the last minute. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Vanessa's lawyer is going to try to flip the narrative. He's going to argue that you were a willing participant, that you knew exactly what was in that suitcase, that Vanessa was the victim of entrapment." Torres leaned forward. "We have evidence that proves otherwise, but we need your testimony to complete the picture. I already said I'd help. There's more." Torres hesitated. "We've been looking into your son's finances. Ryan has received over $180,000 in the past 3 years that can't be explained by his salary or any legitimate source." I felt the blood drain from my face. The deposit started 6 months after Vanessa's first successful shipment. They've been coming in steadily ever since, $15,000 a month, sometimes more. The money goes into a separate account that wasn't listed on his taxes. That doesn't mean he knew where it came from. Mrs. Callahan, your son is a marketing manager. His wife has been trafficking drugs for 8 years. He lives in a $1.2 million house, drives a BMW, sends his kids to a school that costs $30,000 a year. Torres's voice was gentle but firm. "Do you really believe he didn't ask questions?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to defend my son, to believe that he was as much a victim as I was. But the evidence was piling up, and denial was becoming impossible. "He knew," I whispered. "Maybe not everything, but he knew something was wrong." "We think so too. The question is whether he was an active participant or just willfully ignorant. That distinction matters for sentencing." My phone buzzed. Ryan again. He had called 12 times since last night, left a dozen voicemails, sent twice as many texts. I hadn't answered any of them. "That's probably him," Torres said. "He wants me to stop talking to you. He says he's getting a lawyer. He already has one. Victor Espinoza. Very expensive. Very good at getting guilty people off on technicalities." I looked at my phone, at Ryan's name flashing on the screen. The boy I had raised. The man I no longer recognized. I declined the call. "Mrs. Callahan, I need to ask you something difficult. If Ryan was involved, if we can prove he knew about Vanessa's operation and benefited from it, are you willing to testify against him too?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I had expected it, but hearing it out loud was still a blow. I don't know, I said honestly. I need to understand exactly what he did before I can answer that. Torres nodded. That's fair. We're still building the case, but I wanted you to know what we might be asking. The door opened and a younger agent entered, whispering something to Torres. His expression darkened. Mrs. Callahan, there's been a development. Vanessa posted bail. Her family has money. A lot of it. She's out as of an hour ago. The room suddenly felt very small. Vanessa was free. The woman who had tried to send me to prison was walking around Miami while I was trapped in this building, answering questions. Is she allowed to contact me? The bail conditions prohibit her from contacting any witnesses. But we both know that doesn't always stop people. Torres stood up. I'm going to assign a protection detail to you, just as a precaution, and I'd recommend staying in the hotel we arranged. It's harder to track than going back to your regular home. Do you think she'd really try something? Vanessa is facing 25 years to life in federal prison. She has cartel connections and family money. People in her position sometimes make desperate choices. I thought about Vanessa's face when they arrested her. The terror, the rage. The way she had looked at me through the SUV window as they drove her away. There had been hatred in that look. Blame. As if I had somehow caused her arrest instead of being her victim. There's something else, Torres said. We intercepted a phone call from the jail before Vanessa made bail. She was talking to someone. We think it was a cartel contact about cleaning up loose ends. Loose ends meaning me? We're not sure, but we're treating it seriously. I spent the rest of the day in a windowless room, reviewing documents and photographs. Torres brought me lunch, a sandwich I couldn't eat, and coffee that went cold while I stared at evidence of my daughter-in-law's crimes. By evening, I was exhausted and overwhelmed. The protection detail drove me back to the hotel in an unmarked car, checking mirrors and watching for followers. It felt like a movie. Except in movies, the grandmother usually stayed home baking cookies while the young heroes solved the case. I was in my room trying to force down room service pasta when my phone rang again. Not Ryan this time. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mom? A small voice, scared and confused. Mommy said to call you. She said you have to stop talking to the police or we'll never see you again. Emma? Sweetheart, where are you? I'm at home. Mommy's here. She's crying a lot. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. She said bad people took her away because of you. Is that true, Grandma? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Vanessa had put my granddaughter on the phone. She had used an 8-year-old child to threaten me. Emma, listen to me. Your mommy is confused right now. I love you very much, and I would never do anything to hurt you or Lucas. Mommy says you're lying. She says you're helping the bad people. In the background, I heard Vanessa's voice. Tell her, Emma. Tell her what happens to grandchildren when their grandmothers don't cooperate. Mommy says, Emma started crying. Mommy says you'll never see us again. She says we're going away. I sat frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. Vanessa had just used my grandchildren as weapons. She had made Emma deliver a threat. Stop cooperating or lose them forever. I called Torres immediately. She's violating her bail conditions, he said after I explained. Using a child to intimidate a witness. I'll have agents at her house within the hour. What about Emma and Lucas? She said she's taking them away. If she tries to flee, she forfeits bail and faces additional charges. We'll put a flag on her passport and the kids' passports too. And if she runs anyway? Torres was quiet for a moment. Then we find her. But Mrs. Callahan, this is exactly why you need to stay in protection. Vanessa is panicking. Panicking people do stupid, dangerous things. After I hung up, I sat alone in my hotel room, thinking about what had just happened. Vanessa had crossed a line. She had involved children, her own children, in her criminal threats. Any lingering sympathy I might have had for her evaporated in that moment. Whatever sentence she received wouldn't be enough. Whatever punishment the courts handed down would be less than she deserved. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Mom, please, don't testify. Vanessa is the mother of your grandchildren. Think about what you're doing to this family. I typed my response slowly, carefully. Vanessa tried to send me to prison. She just used Emma to threaten me. Don't talk to me about family. I blocked his number. Tomorrow, I would go back to the federal building. I would give my full statement. I would cooperate with everything Torres and his team needed. And if that meant my son went to prison alongside his wife, so be it. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Vanessa had crossed all of them. Now it was time to make her pay. 3 days after Vanessa used Emma to threaten me, Torres called with news that changed everything. We have the financial records, he said. All of them. Callahan, I need you to come in. I arrived at the federal building expecting more photographs, more documents, more evidence of Vanessa's crimes. What I found was worse. Torres led me to a conference room where files were spread across a long table. At one end sat a woman I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, sharp eyes, federal ID clipped to her jacket. This is Agent Marlene Foster, Torres said. She's been leading the financial investigation. Foster didn't waste time on pleasantries. Mrs. Callahan, we've traced every penny that flowed through Vanessa's operation for the past 8 years. The total is approximately $4.7 million in drug money. I had known the numbers were big. I hadn't understood how big. Of that amount, Foster continued, we've identified distributions to various participants. Vanessa's family in Colombia received about $1.2 million. Her lawyer, the one she had before this arrest, received $340,000. Various couriers and handlers received smaller amounts. She paused, sliding a document across the table. And your son Ryan received $186,500. I looked at the paper. It was a bank statement, Ryan's name at the top, transactions highlighted in yellow, deposits of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, dates going back 3 years. He knew, I said. It wasn't a question anymore. He more than knew. Foster pulled out another document. These are emails between Ryan and Vanessa, recovered from a cloud backup she thought she had deleted. I read the first email. It was from Ryan, dated 2 years ago. V, the last shipment went through without problems. Mom has no idea. She trusts you completely. Let me know when you need her again. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. He was coordinating it, I whispered. He was helping her use me. It appears that way. We also found this. Torres handed me his phone. On the screen was a text conversation between Ryan and Vanessa from a week before my trip to Colombia. Vanessa, Mom's flight is booked. Are you sure she won't figure it out? Ryan, she's 64. She thinks the world is like it was in 1985. Just make sure the package looks normal and she'll carry it right through. Vanessa, what if she gets caught? Ryan, then we deny everything and find another mule? Plenty of old people in Miami. Plenty of old people. That's what my son thought of me. A disposable tool. An old woman too naive to notice when her family was using her as a drug mule. I sat down heavily, the phone still in my hands. He called me old, I said, my voice strange and distant. He said I was disposable. I raised him alone. I worked 60-hour weeks to put him through college. I took out a second mortgage so he could have a good life. Tears were running down my face, but I didn't bother wiping them away. And he sold me to his wife for drug money. Torres and Foster exchanged looks. They had dealt with crying witnesses before, I was sure. But something in my expression must have worried them. We understand this is difficult, Torres said carefully. If you need time, no. I stood up, wiping my face with the back of my hand. I don't need time. I need to see everything. Every email, every text, every document that proves what my son did to me. I spent 40 years believing I knew my son. I need to understand who he really is before I can help you put him in prison. The next 4 hours were the worst of my life. I read emails where Ryan and Vanessa discussed me like I was a piece of equipment, evaluating my health, my travel patterns, my level of trust. I saw financial records showing that Ryan had used his share of the drug money to buy a boat, to pay for vacations, to fund a lifestyle I had thought he'd earned through hard work. I found out that I wasn't the only elderly relative they had targeted. Vanessa's aunt had been used as a mule twice before me. An uncle had been arrested in Colombia and was still in prison there. A 71-year-old man who had thought he was simply bringing gifts home from a family reunion. There was a pattern to how they selected their mules. Foster explained it with clinical precision. They look for elderly relatives with no criminal history, she said. People who travel occasionally, who have legitimate reasons to visit Colombia. Grandparents are ideal. Customs agents rarely suspect a grandmother visiting her grandchildren. The mules never know what they're carrying. If they get caught, they can't implicate the organization because they genuinely don't know anything. And if they go to prison? The organization moves on. They've already identified the next target. I thought about the woman in the mugshot Torres had shown me earlier, the 73-year-old serving 15 years. She had probably thought she was just bringing home souvenirs, too. How many people have they done this to? I asked. Foster consulted her notes. We've identified at least 12 unwitting couriers over 8 years. 7 made it through customs without incident. 4 were caught and prosecuted. 1. She hesitated. 1 had a heart attack during questioning and died in custody. A death. There had been a death connected to this operation. Did Ryan know about that? We found an email where Vanessa mentioned it. She wrote, "The old man from the December shipment didn't make it. Natural causes, apparently. Not our problem. Not our problem. A human being had died, and to Vanessa, it was just an inconvenience." I looked at Ryan's bank statements again. He had received a deposit 2 days after that email, and then I found the message that broke me. It was an email from Ryan to Vanessa, sent the day after I agreed to visit Colombia. She said yes. "My dumb mother actually thinks you want her to meet your family. This is going to be the easiest $50K we've ever made." I excused myself and vomited in the bathroom. When I came back, Foster was waiting with water and a concerned expression. "Mrs. Callahan, we have enough evidence to proceed without your testimony. If this is too much, it's not too much. It's exactly what I needed to see." I sat down and looked her in the eye. "My son is a criminal. He participated in trafficking drugs and in setting up his own mother to take the fall if anything went wrong. He needs to be prosecuted alongside his wife. Are you willing to testify to that? In court? I'll testify to everything. What he said, what he did, what he thought of me." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, but clarity. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Torres nodded slowly. "There's one more thing you should know. Vanessa sent a message from a burner phone this morning. It was addressed to the grandchildren." He showed me the message. "Emma and Lucas. Grandma is trying to destroy our family. Don't trust anything she says. She's helping the bad people put Mommy and Daddy in jail. My grandchildren. She was poisoning them against me." "Child Protective Services has been notified," Torres said. "Given the circumstances, the witness intimidation, the attempt to turn children against a protected witness, they're considering removing Emma and Lucas from Vanessa's custody. Where would they go? That's partially up to you. You're their closest stable relative. If you petition for emergency custody, there's a good chance the court would grant it." I thought about what that would mean. Raising 2 children who had been told their grandmother was a villain. Dealing with years of therapy and trauma. Giving up whatever remained of my quiet retirement. At 64, I had thought my child-raising days were behind me. I had raised Ryan alone after his father left us, worked double shifts as a nurse, missed his soccer games and school plays, sacrificed everything so he could have a better life than I did. And this was how he repaid me. By treating me as a disposable asset. By risking my freedom and my life for drug money. But Emma and Lucas hadn't done anything wrong. They were innocent, caught in a situation their parents had created. If I didn't fight for them, who would? Then I thought about Emma's voice on the phone, scared and confused, repeating threats she didn't understand. I remembered Lucas's laugh when I pushed him on the swings during my visit, his sticky fingers from the mango ice cream we shared on the last day. "I want custody," I said. "Whatever it takes. It won't be easy," Torres warned. "Vanessa's family has money. They'll fight you. And Ryan, even facing federal charges, might petition for parental rights. Let them fight. I've been fighting for 40 years. I'm not going to stop now. I'll have our lawyers start the paperwork. Foster gathered the documents on the table. Mrs. Callahan, there's one more thing. We've identified the man who was supposed to pick up the shipment in Miami, Vanessa's contact. His name is Marcus Webb. She slid a photograph across the table. A handsome man in his early 40s, dark hair, confident smile. I had never seen him before. We believe Webb is higher up in the organization than Vanessa. He's been operating in South Florida for at least 10 years, but we've never been able to get enough evidence to arrest him. Foster paused. Until now, Webb has offered to testify against Vanessa in exchange for immunity. What does that mean for the case? It means we'll have someone who can explain exactly how the operation worked, who recruited Vanessa, who trained her, who received the shipments. Torres's expression was grim. It also means Webb is going to testify that Ryan was an active participant, not just a beneficiary. Ryan hadn't just known about the drugs. He had been part of the organization. I don't care, I said. Prosecute him. Prosecute all of them. That night, I lay in my hotel bed staring at the ceiling. The protection detail was outside my door. Vanessa was somewhere in Miami, probably plotting her next move. Ryan was with his lawyer, preparing to deny everything, and I was planning to take their children and help send them both to prison. 6 months ago, my biggest worry had been whether to book a Caribbean cruise or visit my sister in Tampa. Now I was caught in a drug trafficking case. My son had revealed himself as a monster, and 2 traumatized children needed me to save them. I pulled out my phone and looked at photos from happier times. Ryan at his wedding, beaming next to Vanessa, Emma's first birthday party, Lucas learning to ride a bike in their Coral Gables driveway. Had it all been fake? Had every smile and hug and "I love you, Mom" been calculated, designed to keep me compliant and unsuspecting? I didn't know. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I knew what I had to do next. I would testify. I would fight for my grandchildren. I would rebuild whatever could be salvaged from the wreckage of my family. And I would never again trust someone just because they shared my blood. Ryan had called me his dumb mother. He had thought I was too old and naive to figure out what he was doing. He was about to learn that old mothers have long memories, strong wills, and absolutely nothing left to lose. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. The custody hearing was scheduled for 10 days after my meeting with Torres and Foster. 10 days to prepare for the most important fight of my life. I spent the first 3 days with DEA lawyers, going over my statement again and again, every detail of my trip to Colombia, every interaction with Vanessa. Every moment that might prove I had been an unwitting victim rather than a willing participant. Vanessa's lawyer is going to argue you knew, the federal prosecutor warned me. His name was David Chen, and he had the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much ugliness. He's going to say no grandmother is that naive, that you must have suspected something. I didn't suspect anything. I trusted my daughter-in-law. I believe you. The jury will believe you too, but you need to be prepared for aggressive cross-examination. On day 4, Child Protective Services removed Emma and Lucas from Vanessa's custody. Torres called me with the news. They're being placed in emergency foster care for now. Your petition for guardianship is being expedited, but there's a hearing next week. CPS is arranging a supervised visit tomorrow. They want to assess your relationship with the children before making any decisions. The visit took place at a CPS office in downtown Miami. The room was designed to look friendly, colorful furniture, toys scattered around, but nothing could hide what it really was. A place where broken families tried to piece themselves back together. Emma and Lucas were brought in by a social worker. Emma looked pale and scared. Lucas was clutching a stuffed dinosaur that I recognized from their house in Coral Gables. "Grandma!" Lucas ran to me and wrapped his arms around my legs. He was only 6, too young to understand what was happening. All he knew was that his world had been turned upside down. Emma hung back, her eyes wary. "Hi, sweetheart," I said gently. "How are you doing? Mom says you're trying to take us away from her." Emma's voice was flat, rehearsed. "She says you're a liar, and you're helping the bad people." I knelt down so I was at her level. "Emma, I know your mommy is very upset right now, And I know you're confused and scared. But I want you to know that I love you, and I would never do anything to hurt you. Then why did you make them take us away? I didn't make anyone do anything. The police and the social workers are trying to keep you safe. That's their job. Emma's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to cry. Then she straightened her shoulders, a gesture so like her mother that it made my heart ache. Mom says we're going to Colombia to live with Abuela and Abuelo. She says you'll never find us there. I looked at the social worker, alarm bells ringing in my head. After the visit, I told Torres what Emma had said. He immediately made calls. Vanessa's passport has been flagged, he reported. The children's passports too. If she tries to leave the country, she'll be stopped. But she's planning something. Emma sounded like she was repeating a script. We're increasing surveillance on Vanessa, and I'm recommending that the court expedite your custody petition. The next few days were a blur of legal meetings, court filings, and sleepless nights. I found a small apartment near the federal building. I couldn't afford the hotel anymore, and I needed somewhere the children could stay if the custody hearing went my way. The apartment was nothing like my comfortable home in Tampa. 2 bedrooms, ancient appliances, a view of a parking lot, but I scrubbed it clean, bought new sheets for the beds, and hung photos of Emma and Lucas on the refrigerator. I bought some basic toys, Legos for Lucas, art supplies for Emma. I stocked the pantry with foods I remembered them liking: macaroni and cheese, applesauce, the strawberry yogurt that Emma insisted on eating every morning. In the evenings, after the legal meetings were done, I would sit on the small balcony and look out at the city lights. Miami had always felt like a foreign country to me, too hot, too loud, too different from the quiet Tampa neighborhoods where I had spent most of my life. But this was where my grandchildren were. This was where I needed to be. The CPS worker assigned to our case was a woman named Gloria Rodriguez. She was in her late 40s, with kind eyes and a voice that suggested she had seen too many broken families to be surprised by anything. "Mrs. Callahan," she said during one of our meetings, "I need to be honest with you. This is going to be a difficult transition for everyone. Emma, in particular, has been deeply affected by what's happened. She's angry, confused, and she's been told things about you that aren't true. I know, but she's 8 years old. Children can heal. With the right support, yes. But you need to understand that this isn't just about providing a roof and 3 meals a day. These children will need therapy, stability, consistency. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my own childhood, my father who drank, my mother who worked 3 jobs, the chaos that had defined my early years. I had vowed then that any children I raised would have better. I had failed with Ryan. I wouldn't fail again. "I'm prepared for whatever they need," I said. "I've been a nurse for 30 years. I know how to care for people who are hurting." Gloria nodded slowly. "I believe you. And for what it's worth, I think you're the best option for these kids. Better than foster care, certainly. Better than Vanessa's family in Colombia. This was going to be their home. Our home, at least for now." On day 8, Ryan showed up at my apartment. I don't know how he found me. Maybe he hired a private investigator. Maybe Vanessa's lawyers tracked me down. He was standing in my doorway when I came back from a meeting with Chen. "Mom," his voice was desperate, "please, we need to talk." I should have slammed the door. I should have called Torres and reported the contact. Instead, I let him in, against my better judgment, against everything I had learned about who my son really was. He sat on my secondhand couch, looking around at the bare walls and minimal furniture. "This is where you're living now? This is what you've reduced yourself to? This is where I'm living because your wife tried to send me to prison and you helped her." Ryan flinched. "Mom, I swear I didn't know what she was really doing. I thought the money was from her import business." "Stop." My voice was cold. "I've read the emails, Ryan. I've seen the texts. You knew exactly what was happening, and you participated in it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Okay, I knew, but I did it for you, Mom. You're 64 years old, living on a nurse's pension. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I was planning to buy you a new house, to set up a retirement fund." "You were planning to buy me things with drug money?" I laughed bitterly. "Ryan, I would rather live in poverty than know my son was a criminal. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You had choices. You could have said no. You could have reported Vanessa to the police. Instead, you helped her turn other people's grandmothers into drug mules, including your own mother. Ryan's face twisted. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Vanessa, she's not the woman I thought I married. She's connected to people, dangerous people. If you had refused, you might have ended up in trouble. Instead, you chose to put me in trouble. You chose to sacrifice your mother to save yourself. We stared at each other across the small living room. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who brought me dandelions from the yard, who curled up beside me during thunderstorms, who told me I was the best mom in the whole world. That boy was gone. Maybe he had never really existed. I came here to ask you not to testify, Ryan said finally. If you don't testify, the prosecution case is weaker. Vanessa's lawyer thinks he can get the charges reduced, maybe even dismissed. And what about the 12 other people who carried drugs for you? What about the man who died in custody? Ryan looked away. That wasn't my fault, wasn't it? You helped run the operation. You profited from it. Those people's lives were destroyed because of you. Mom, please, think about Emma and Lucas. If both their parents go to prison, then I'll raise them. I'll give them the kind of childhood you forgot you had. Ryan stood up abruptly. You're making a mistake. Vanessa's family has connections. If you testify, they'll make your life hell. It's a warning. From your son. He walked to the door, then paused. I loved you, Mom. I still do. But you're choosing strangers over your own family. No, Ryan, you did that. Years ago, when you decided drug money was more important than integrity. He left without another word. That night I called Torres and told him about the visit. He wasn't happy. He shouldn't have been able to find you. We're moving you to a secure location until the trial. What about the custody hearing? It's in 2 days. We'll have agents with you the entire time. And after, if I get custody, where do we go? Torres was quiet for a moment. We can arrange witness protection if necessary. New identities, relocation to another state. The children have already lost everything. I can't take away their names and their home on top of it. Then you'll need to be careful. Vanessa's family has resources. They've already tried to intimidate you through Emma. They might try other methods. I thought about the way Ryan had looked at me before he left. Not with anger exactly, but with something colder. Calculation. As if he was weighing options. I'll be careful, I said. But I won't hide. Not anymore. The next morning, I received a hand-delivered envelope at my apartment. Inside was a photograph. Me sitting on the balcony the night before, taken from across the street. On the back, someone had written, "We know where you are." I called Torres immediately. An hour later, I was in a DEA safe house, surrounded by agents and security cameras. I packed my few belongings into a suitcase, my third relocation in 2 weeks. As I zipped up the bag, I noticed the small photo I carried everywhere, Emma and Lucas at their school play, dressed as angels. I would fight for them. I would testify against their parents. I would do whatever it took to give them a chance at a normal life, even if it meant losing my son forever. In my purse, tucked inside my wallet, was another photo. Ryan at his college graduation, hugging me with pure joy on his face. I didn't throw it away, but I moved it to the back, behind the picture of my grandchildren. Some photos belong in the past, some belong in the future. I knew which one I was choosing. The federal courthouse in Miami was a fortress of marble and glass, designed to project power and permanence. I arrived 2 hours early for the trial, escorted by Torres and 2 other agents. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. Today, I would testify against my own son and daughter-in-law. Today, I would help put them in prison. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the gallery. This case had attracted attention. A grandmother used as an unwitting drug mule by her own family. Vanessa's supporters sat on one side, Ryan's lawyer on the other. And in the front, behind the defense table, sat Ryan and Vanessa themselves. It was the first time I had seen them together since the arrest. Vanessa looked different without her designer clothes and perfect makeup. She was wearing prison orange, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression hadn't changed. Still calculating, still cold, still looking for an angle. Ryan looked worse. He had lost weight. and there was a hollowness in his face that I had never seen before. When he saw me enter the courtroom, he looked away quickly, as if the sight of me caused him physical pain. Good, I thought. It should hurt. The prosecutor, David Chen, called me to the stand after the opening statements. Please state your name for the record. Patricia Ann Callahan. And what is your relationship to the defendants? Ryan Callahan is my son. Vanessa Callahan is his wife, my daughter-in-law. The questions started slowly, methodically. Chen walked me through my relationship with Ryan and Vanessa, my trip to Colombia, the moment when Agent Torres had stopped me from getting out of the taxi. What did you think was happening? Chen asked. I didn't understand at first. I thought there had been some kind of mistake. It wasn't until I saw the suitcase, the one they found in Vanessa's trunk, that I realized what they had been planning. And what was in that suitcase? 15 kilograms of cocaine, worth over $400,000. Were you aware that you were carrying contraband? Absolutely not. Vanessa had given me a suitcase at the airport in Colombia and told me it was lighter, easier for me to manage. I had no idea she had switched my luggage with drug-filled bags. Chen produced the emails, the ones where Ryan and Vanessa had discussed me like merchandise. He showed them on screens around the courtroom, letting everyone read my son's words. She's 64. She thinks the world is like it was in 1985. My dumb mother actually thinks you want her to meet your family. Then we deny everything and find another mule. Plenty of old people in Miami. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at Ryan, even though I could feel his gaze on me. Mrs. Callahan, Chen said, did you have any knowledge that your son was involved in drug trafficking? I believed he was a marketing manager. I believed his wife worked in imports. I trusted them completely. And how did it feel to discover that trust was misplaced? Vanessa's lawyer objected, calls for speculation, but the judge overruled him. The question was about my state of mind, and that was relevant. It felt like a death, I said quietly. Not a sudden death, but a slow one. Every piece of evidence I saw killed another part of my memory. The son I thought I knew, the boy I raised, the man I was proud of. He doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. The courtroom was silent. I heard someone in the gallery crying. One of Vanessa's relatives, perhaps. Or maybe just a stranger moved by the tragedy unfolding before them. Then it was Vanessa's lawyer's turn. Victor Espinoza was exactly what I expected. Expensive suit, confident smile, sharp eyes looking for weakness. He approached the witness stand like a predator circling prey. Mrs. Callahan, you claim you had no knowledge of the drug trafficking operation. But isn't it true that you traveled to Colombia multiple times over the past 5 years? Yes. To visit my grandchildren. And each time you brought back luggage that had been packed or handled by Vanessa or her family? Yes. They helped me with my bags. So you're asking this court to believe that over 5 trips to Colombia, you never once noticed anything suspicious about your luggage? The suitcases were always full of normal things, gifts, souvenirs, clothes. I had no reason to suspect anything. But you also had no reason to check, did you? You simply trusted your family. Yes, I trusted my family. Espinoza smiled. Convenient trust, wouldn't you say? The kind of trust that provides plausible deniability? Chen objected. The judge sustained it. But Espinoza had planted the seed. The cross-examination continued for another hour. Espinoza tried to paint me as naive at best, complicit at worst. He questioned my memory, my credibility, my motivations. He suggested I was testifying against my son to gain custody of my grandchildren. But I held firm. I answered every question honestly and directly. I didn't break. When it was over, I stepped down from the witness stand and walked past the defense table. For the first time, I looked directly at Ryan. He was crying, silent tears running down his face. His mouth formed words that I couldn't hear, but I could read them. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't respond. I kept walking. During the recess, Ryan's lawyer approached me in the hallway. Mrs. Callahan, my client would like to speak with you. I have nothing to say to him. He wants to ask for your forgiveness. He says he knows he doesn't deserve it, but he's right. He doesn't deserve it. I looked the lawyer in the eye. Your client helped his wife use me as a drug mule. He profited from an operation that destroyed people's lives. He called me his dumb mother in writing, and now he wants forgiveness? Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone wants a second chance. There's a difference. I walked away before he could respond. The trial lasted 4 days. Other witnesses testified: Agent Torres, Agent Foster, Marcus Webb with his immunity deal. The evidence was overwhelming. Vanessa and Ryan had been running the operation for years, using unwitting couriers, laundering money through legitimate businesses. Marcus Webb's testimony was particularly devastating. He explained exactly how the operation worked. Vanessa would identify potential mules among her extended family, Ryan would help coordinate logistics, and Webb would receive the shipments on the Miami end. The grandmother was perfect, Webb said on the stand, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. 64 years old, retired nurse, no criminal record. Customs never looks twice at someone like her. I watched the jury's faces as Webb described how they had chosen me. The disgust was obvious. These were ordinary people, teachers, accountants, parents, and they were hearing about a scheme to exploit elderly relatives for drug money. Vanessa tried to defend herself. She took the stand against her lawyer's advice, claiming she had been coerced by Colombian cartels, that Ryan had pressured her into the scheme, that she was a victim herself. No one believed her. The evidence was too clear. The emails, the bank records, the testimony from Webb, all of it painted a picture of a woman who had coldly and deliberately used vulnerable people for profit, including her own mother-in-law. Ryan never took the stand. His lawyer mounted a weak defense, arguing that Ryan had been manipulated by his wife, that he had been a passive participant at most. But the dumb mother email destroyed any sympathy the jury might have had. On the 5th day, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty. On all counts. Vanessa was convicted of drug trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering, and attempted use of an unwitting courier. Ryan was convicted of conspiracy and money laundering. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month, but the prosecutor told me what to expect. Vanessa would receive 20 to 25 years. Ryan would receive 8 to 12, with the possibility of parole after 5. It was over. They were going to prison. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. After the verdict was announced, I watched them take Ryan away. He turned one last time, looking for me in the gallery. Our eyes met. "I love you, Mom," he mouthed. I didn't mouth anything back. The marshals led him through a side door, and then he was gone. My son, my baby, the child I had sacrificed everything for. I walked out of the courthouse into the Miami sunshine. Torres was waiting for me. "It's done," he said. "You did the right thing. You told the truth. You helped put dangerous criminals behind bars. You protected your grandchildren from a life of lies." I looked up at the sky, blue and bright, not a cloud in sight. A perfect day, the kind of day that should mean something good was happening. "The custody hearing is tomorrow," I said. "After that, I'm taking Emma and Lucas home. I don't know yet. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere they can start over." Torres nodded. "You've been through hell, Mrs. Callahan, but you came out the other side." I thought about everything I had lost: my son, my trust, my belief in the family I thought I had, and I thought about what I had gained: 2 grandchildren who needed me, a chance to do things differently. "Not the other side," I said. "Just through. The hard part is still ahead." The agents drove me back to the safe house. Tomorrow I would fight for custody of Emma and Lucas. Tomorrow I would begin building a new life. Tonight, I sat alone and cried for the son I had lost. Not to prison, but to choices he had made long before I knew anything was wrong. He had called me his dumb mother, but I wasn't dumb. I was just trusting. And trust, I now understood, was something that had to be earned, not given freely, not assumed. 2 years have passed since the trial. I'm sitting on the porch of a small house in Asheville, North Carolina, watching Emma practice cartwheels on the front lawn while Lucas builds something complicated with sticks and rocks in the garden. We left Miami 6 months after the verdicts. Too many memories there, too many connections to what we lost. Asheville was far enough to feel like a fresh start, close enough to allow prison visits if we ever decided to make them. Emma is 10 now, and some days I forget she's the same angry, confused child who told me her mother said I was a liar. She still has moments of darkness, times when she retreats to her room and won't talk, times when I catch her looking at old photos with an expression I can't read. But she laughs more than she cries now. She has friends at school. Last month, she made the honor roll. Lucas adjusted faster, the way younger children often do. At 8, he remembers his parents, but in that fuzzy way that softens hard edges. He calls me Grandma Mom sometimes, a title he invented himself that makes my heart ache every time I hear it. The house isn't much. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a kitchen that gets good morning light. I bought it with money from the sale of my Tampa condo, plus some help from a victim compensation fund that Agent Torres helped me navigate. It's the first house I've ever owned that truly feels like mine. I've started a small garden in the backyard. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs. Working with soil reminds me that things can grow from nothing, that patience and care can produce something worth having. The children help sometimes, getting dirt under their fingernails and complaining about worms until they're laughing too hard to remember they were complaining. Life isn't perfect. I'm 66 now, and some mornings my joints remind me that I'm raising children at an age when most grandmothers are enjoying retirement cruises. The therapy bills are substantial. Both children see counselors weekly, and I've started seeing one myself. It turns out that surviving your son's betrayal requires professional help, no matter how strong you think you are. Vanessa was sentenced to 22 years. She'll be 60 when she's eligible for parole. Older than I was when she tried to destroy my life. Her parents stopped contacting us after the first year. I think the shame finally outweighed the anger. Sometimes I wonder if they knew what their daughter was doing, if they were complicit in the operation, or just willfully blind. I've decided it doesn't matter. The children have one set of grandparents now, and that's enough. Ryan got 10 years. Reduced from 12 because he cooperated with investigators after the trial. He provided information about Vanessa's other operations, about contacts in Colombia that the DEA didn't know about. Some people might call that redemption. I call it self-preservation. The first letter arrived 6 months into his sentence. "Mom," it began, "I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve your attention, let alone your forgiveness. But I need to try." I read it at the kitchen table while the children were at school. 3 pages of Ryan's handwriting, cramped and desperate, nothing like the confident script I remembered from birthday cards and Christmas notes. He wrote about growing up, about how he always felt like he wasn't enough. He wrote about meeting Vanessa, about how her certainty and power seemed like everything he lacked. He wrote about the first time she asked him to help, how small it seemed, just moving some money, just not asking questions. "I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone," he wrote. "I told myself the people she used were willing participants, that they knew the risks. I was lying to myself because the truth was too ugly to face." Then he wrote about me. "When I found out you were going to be the next courier, I should have stopped everything. I should have gone to the police, should have warned you, should have done anything except what I did, which was nothing. I let Vanessa convince me that you would be fine, that customs never looks at old ladies, that the risk was minimal." I had to put the letter down at that point. My hands were shaking too hard to read. "I called you my dumb mother in an email," he continued. "Those words haunt me every day. You're the least dumb person I've ever known. You worked double shifts to raise me alone. You gave up your own dreams so I could have a chance at mine, and I repaid you by treating you like cargo." He ended with something I didn't expect. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that somewhere in this cell, your son, the real one, the one you raised, is still alive. He's buried under years of bad choices and moral failures, but he's there, and he's sorry. More sorry than any words could ever express." I didn't write back for 3 months. When I finally did, it was just 1 paragraph. "Ryan, I received your letter. I'm not ready to forgive you. I may never be ready, but I'm not going to pretend you don't exist. Emma asks about her father sometimes. Lucas draws pictures of a family with 4 people, even though he only lives with 1. They deserve to know who you really are. Both the man who betrayed their grandmother and the boy I raised who still exists somewhere inside you. I don't know what that means yet. I'm still figuring it out. So are you. Mom. We've exchanged letters every few months since then. They're not warm exactly. I don't sign them with love or ask about his feelings. But I tell him about the children. I send him Emma's report cards and Lucas's drawings. I update him on their lives, because whatever else he is, he's still their father. Last month, Emma asked if she could write to him. Are you sure? I asked her. You don't have to. I know, she said. But I have questions, things I need to understand. I helped her compose the letter. She asked Ryan why he did it, why he let Mommy hurt people, why he didn't protect Grandma when he should have. His response took 2 weeks. He answered every question honestly, not making excuses, not minimizing what he'd done. He told Emma that sometimes people make terrible choices for complicated reasons, that he let fear and greed and weakness control him when he should have been brave. I failed everyone who loved me, he wrote, including you. The only thing I can do now is try to become someone worth knowing by the time I get out. I don't expect you to wait for me, but if you ever want to give me a chance, I'll be here. Emma kept the letter in a box under her bed. She reads it sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Ryan. Forgiveness feels like too big a word for what we're building, but I've stopped hating him. Or at least, the hatred has cooled into something more complicated. Disappointment, maybe. Grief for the son I thought I knew. Hope, very carefully guarded, that the man he's trying to become might be worth knowing. The justice system did what it was supposed to do. Vanessa and Ryan are paying for their crimes. Marcus Webb got his immunity deal and disappeared into witness protection. The DEA dismantled the operation, arrested the Colombian contacts, and probably saved a dozen more mules from walking through customs with cocaine in their luggage. But real justice, the kind that matters, isn't about prison sentences or courtroom verdicts. Real justice is Emma learning to trust again. Lucas growing up without the shadow of his parents' crimes defining him. Real justice is a 66-year-old woman finding purpose she never expected, building a family from the wreckage of betrayal. I still have the red suitcase. It sits in the back of my closet, empty now. A reminder of how close I came to losing everything. Some days I think about throwing it away, finally letting go of that chapter of my life. But I keep it, the same way I keep Ryan's college graduation photo in my wallet. Not because I want to remember the pain, but because I need to remember who I am. I'm Patricia Ann Callahan. I survived my daughter-in-law's attempt to destroy me. I testified against my own son. I raised my grandchildren when their parents couldn't, and I'm still standing. On the porch, Emma finishes her cartwheel practice and runs over to show me a scrape on her elbow. Proof of effort, she calls it. Lucas abandons his stick structure to investigate, asking 100 questions about blood and scabs and healing. I bandage the scrape with supplies from the first aid kit I always keep nearby. 30 years as a nurse doesn't disappear just because you retire. Grandma Mom, Lucas says, watching me work, are you going to live with us forever? I smooth the bandage and kiss Emma's forehead. I'm going to live with you as long as you need me, and probably longer than that, because I'm stubborn. Emma laughs. Lucas considers this seriously, then nods approval. The sun is setting over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in a federal prison, Ryan is probably looking at the same sky through barred windows. Somewhere else, Vanessa is serving her sentence, maybe thinking about the children she'll barely know by the time she's free. I don't think about them as often as I used to. There are too many other things to think about. Homework and dentist appointments, and whether Lucas is getting enough vegetables, whether Emma needs new shoes, whether the tomatoes are ready to pick. Normal things. Family things. The kind of things I never expected to be thinking about at 66, but somehow became the center of my world. Come inside, I tell the children. Dinner's almost ready. They race each other to the door, arguing about who gets to set the table. I follow more slowly, pausing at the threshold to look back at the mountains one more time. I used to think my story was over. Retirement, quiet years, maybe some travel if my pension stretched far enough. Instead, life handed me betrayal. Nearly handed me a prison sentence, and then handed me these two small humans who needed someone to love them. I chose them. Every day, I choose them again. That's what justice really looks like. Not punishment, but possibility. Not revenge, but the chance to build something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. The red suitcase stays in the closet. The letters keep coming from Ryan. The children keep growing. And I keep standing one day at a time, proving that some grandmothers are a lot tougher than anyone expected, including themselves.